Imagine this, you're 6 feet underground, it's pitch black and you suddenly wake up. Your chest feels heavy, your lungs are burning, you can't move much, and then it hits you, you're in a coffin. The dirt above you muffles every sound, but in your hand is a rope. And that rope is your only chance to live. Because somewhere above ground, that rope is tied to a bell. One ring, and maybe, just maybe, someone will hear you. Sounds like something out of a horror movie, right? But here's the wild part. This was real. This was a legit thing in the 1800s because people were terrified of being buried alive. And honestly, they had good reason. Back then, doctors didn't have the high-tech gear we've got today to confirm death. No fancy monitors, no beeping heart rate machines. If someone looked still enough, pale enough, and wasn't breathing, obviously, people assumed they were gone. But every now and then, they were wrong. And when they were wrong, well, let's just say you didn't want to be that person waking up in a coffin. Now, here's the crazy part of the story that'll give you chills. Newspapers at the time were packed with these nightmare headlines, stories of people being accidentally buried alive. You'd have gravediggers hearing strange noises days later, families opening up caskets to horrifying discoveries. Sometimes scratch marks were found inside the coffin lid. Sometimes fingernails were gone, bloody from trying to claw their way out. That fear spread like wildfire, and that's when people started coming up with what they called a safety coffin. Picture it. Your coffin has a little tube, a rope, maybe even a small flag. The rope ran from inside your coffin up through the dirt and connected to a bell above the grave. If you woke up, you could tug that rope, and ding, 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 someone would know you weren't as dead as they thought. It was basically a 19th century life alert, but for the undead. But here's where it gets even more intense. Not everyone trusted just one safety measure. Some rich folks took it to the next level. They'd have breathing pipes installed, glass panels so light could come through, even little food compartments, like they were prepping for the worst Airbnb stay ever. There was even a German inventor who designed a coffin with a ladder in it. Just in case. I mean, a ladder. Underground. The optimism is wild. And here's the emotional gut punch. Imagine you're a family member. Your loved one is gone. You've grieved, cried your eyes out, said goodbye, and then one night you hear that bell ringing from the cemetery. What do you even feel? Relief, horror, guilt, probably all of it. Probably all of it. There are documented cases where bells did ring. Some people were saved, others. It was just the wind, or animals bumping into them. Sometimes the bells rang too late. This paranoia even sparked new phrases. Ever heard the saying, "a saved by the bell"? Yeah, it's not just about boxing rounds. Part of its origin comes from this exact era, when that bell could literally mean the difference between life and death. Another one, a dead ringer. That came from people putting bells above graves, thinking if the bell rang, the dead person was actually alive, a ringer for death, but not really dead. Creepy, huh? Let me tell you one true story that'll stick with you. In 1896, a woman named Mrs. Collins was declared dead after an illness. Her body was prepped for burial, put in a coffin, and lowered into the ground with a safety bell. Her husband insisted on it, even though people thought he was being dramatic. That night, the caretaker swore he heard a faint ring. By the time they dug her up, she was still cold and gone. But her fingernails were broken, her face twisted in panic. She had been alive when they buried her. That rope? She had pulled it. And that's the thing, these stories fuel a nationwide obsession with making sure you were really dead before getting buried. Some doctors started waiting days before burial just in case. Some cemeteries even had awaiting mortuaries, where they'd store bodies until signs of decay were undeniable. This wasn't just America, either. In Europe, the fear was so intense that in Germany, bells were practically standard issue in some areas. They'd hire a death watch workers who stayed in cemeteries overnight to listen for bells. Imagine being that guy, sitting in the dark, listening to the wind rattle chains, praying you don't hear a ring. But also, deep down, hoping you do, because it means you can save someone. Now here's the wild twist. Technology and medicine eventually caught up, and these safety coffins faded away. But to this day, there are still modern patterns for them, and people still have a tiny fear in the back of their mind about being buried alive. In fact, every now and then, news pops up about someone coming back to life in a morgue, so maybe the fear isn't totally irrational. And I've got to say, the thought of lying there in total darkness with just a rope to cling to, that hits different. It's a reminder that not all our deepest fears are monsters or ghosts. Sometimes it's the idea that the people around you might be so sure you're gone, they seal you away forever. Now, if you're thinking, a few, glad that's just old history, well, let's just say medical mistakes still happen today. Not common, but they do. Which begs the question, if you had the choice, would you want a bell above your grave, just in case? Before you answer, remember this. Those bells weren't just about fear. They were about hope. Hope that someone would hear you. Hope that a mistake wouldn't be the end. Hope that you could fight your way back to the surface. And maybe, in a strange way, that's why this story hits so hard. Because deep down, we all want to believe that if we were ever in a dark place, trapped, voiceless, running out of air, someone, somewhere would hear our bell. So here's what I want you to do. Next time you hear someone say, "a saved by the bell," think about the people in the 1800s whose lives depended on it. And if you're still here with me at this point in the video, do me a favor. Hit that like button so this story gets out to more people. Subscribe if you love history that's just a little dark, a little creepy, and 100% real. And drop a comment telling me, would you have wanted a safety coffin back then? Or would you trust the doctors to get it right the first time? Because honestly, I'm not so sure I would.